Welcome to the AA Podcast, our little corner of the web where we are not afraid to discuss tough questions like,
when did nutrition, health, movement, and stress management become alternative medicine?
Where we embrace challenges in all aspects of life to become healthier and stronger versions of ourselves.
And where food and movement are the best kinds of medicine, and cooking meals at home is a revolutionary act. Hello, and welcome to another episode of the AA Podcast. This is Ashley Olson.
And I'm Andrea Gray.
What are you laughing at?
I don't know. I can't help laugh. Every time we have the countdown and we have to be quiet, it's very hard for me.
Normally, I'm editing out that part.
I know. I'm
I'm like,
sorry.
where did we all not talk for a second before I said
Oh my
welcome?
gosh.
Oh
Okay.
man. We were just saying, I think it's
Mm,
been several weeks since we've recorded, so we feel
Yeah.
like we're starting all over again, I
Yep.
feel. So it's fine. I'm sure this episode will go lovely.
Yeah.
But before we get started in our
hmm
topic today, which is very, shall I say,
It,
seasonal.
oh, Ashley, that was terrible and yet so good. I hope like one person finds us as funny as we think we are.
Oh, I'm sure. Like, how could they not?
How could they not? That's what we keep saying.
They're
And yet,
probably listening now and being like, would they
I
just
know.
freaking shut up?
I
Before we
know.
continue talking about our topic,
hmm
we will share our weekly Bible verse. And mine is coming from Psalm 33:8. And it says, let all the earth fear the Lord. Let all the inhabitants of the world stand in awe of him.
Okay, and I chose mine from the ever uplifting book of Job. But this is a good one. The Spirit of God has
It's
made
towards the
me.
end.
That's right. That's right. That's when Job gets his head screwed on straight. The Spirit of God has made me, and the breath of the Almighty gives me life.
Ah, so good. If you don't
Okay.
know the Book of Job,
Oh, it's one of my faves.
it's a pretty good one. So
It is
it'll
amazing.
definitely give you perspective on
Pers-
if you're
I know.
feeling uh,
I know.
down and out about your
Put
current life
upon.
situations. Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
Well,
mm-hmm.
Andrea, I think I am just one of many, if not all, individuals that deal with some sort
Mm,
of seasonal allergies. And it's definitely gotten better since I've implemented some of the things that we'll talk about in our
mm-hmm.
next episode.
That's
Plug.
right. That's your
But
teaser. If you don't come back, you will suffer.
so the last two episodes, you weren't allowed to listen to the second one before the first one.
hmm
And maybe there should be that rule in this one too, but
Okay.
it's
I'm
okay.
declaring it.
Okay. Um, so today we are going to be talking about allergies.
hmm
And we're not talking about food allergies, we're talking about literally seasonal allergies. Well, how would you
Yep.
describe them?
You know, everything goes through my head as like an ICD-10 code. That's what we have to code to get paid by insurance companies. So, unfortunately, that's the lens through which I view everything. So, the ICD-10 really for this kind of allergy is allergic rhinitis, and it's so much more than that. But we're gonna go with like you know.
Sounds like somebody's going to have a rhino nose by the sea.
Yes, course, of course, but it's seasonal, so it's fine.
It's
Um,
fine.
right.
No
And
plastic surgery needed.
no alterations needed. So yeah, this is the season, and I this is a really good time for this episode. Hopefully people won't listen to this too late in the season because there will be lots of things that you can do prophylactically to keep all of these bothersome symptoms from recurring. So today, yes, we are into the weeds of the allergy symptoms, and I just thought maybe people would find it as fascinating as I do, like how this all comes about in the body, because then we can kind of see why the interventions we're going to talk about next week actually work. So, yeah, I don't know. For all those nerds out there, unite. We're gonna talk about some cool stuff today.
Yeah, I'm excited. I mean, I never really had allergies. Oh my gosh, can you hear that?
Hmm.
Um, I never really had allergies until I was a teenager and we moved
Yeah.
to Ohio. And it must have been like the change of
Hmm.
um, climate.
Yes. Now okay. So a couple interesting things I have heard. This could be a complete wives' tale. I don't know, but I have heard that allergies and allergy symptoms can be cyclical, and that every 7 years or so you can change.
I've heard
Um,
that.
yeah, and so I don't know if there's any validity to that. I haven't looked that up, but anyway, I think it's kind of fun to think about. But then also, I find it interesting that there are some people that struggle mightily with allergies and they move to a wetter climate and things are better for them. Okay. Then I have also seen people who struggle with allergies move to a drier or like a high desert, like where you and I are, and it's so much better there. So I don't know. It makes sense though because it's all mediated by the immune system, which is crazy. We
Mm-hmm.
don't have all this figured out. So, yeah, not surprised that it is complex
Yeah,
and not consistent from person to person.
agreed. Yeah, my dad actually, I talked to him today, and he's dealing with some allergies now. So
Mm, yeah. Yeah, and boy, is it coming. So, yeah. So the first thing that I wanted to go into is kind of who are the players here? And by players I mean what what do we see when we see seasonal allergies, and who is really at risk for developing these? So one, can they exist alone? Can seasonal allergies exist by themselves? Yes, of course they can. However, they also have seasonal allergies has two sisters that go along with it, and the three of them are called together the atopic triad. And I think we've maybe hinted about this in a previous episode, but the
hmm
atopic triad includes allergies like the kind we're talking about today, asthma, and then eczema or dermatitis. Okay. So, eczema is like atopic dermatitis. Um, that is often seen with people who have allergies and or asthma. So all of these conditions can exist alone, but most often people will develop at least one other of the triad. So those all kind of pal around together.
okay.
Okay.
So, but they don't all have to exist together. Like
Nope.
they don't. If you have one, you don't have all necessarily.
Right, not necessarily, but odds are pretty good you're probably going to develop another one as you progress through life,
Okay.
if you don't mediate. So,
What does
and
that mean?
we'll talk about some
Okay.
mediation. Got to come back next week. So,
Oh,
anyway, so then the next thing I wanted to talk about is I wanted to get a little granular, which is a huge nerd joke. You're welcome for that. I wanted to get a little granular, talking about granulocytes. I wanted to talk about the players in what facilitates allergic symptoms. So there are symptoms that are common to pretty much everybody that deals with allergic rhinitis. Okay. So, the common symptoms, I'm going to go through those in a little bit because, for starters, I want to tell you who the major players are in relation to um, what is happening during an allergic reaction. So, first of all, let's talk about the cells. Okay, these will be kind of like the soldiers in your body, right? We very often we liken the immune system to, they're going to war. These things are going to war either against yourself in the case of autoimmunity, or they're going to war against like bacteria or virus or fungus or and in this case they're going to war against ridiculous things that they should not be. So these cells or these soldiers, primarily today we're going to talk about mast cells because these are really the key players, because mast cells are the cells that contain all of the histamine. So if you've ever wondered where histamine comes from, histamine is really the major driving force behind a lot of the symptoms that you're experiencing. So histamine is the weapon, and mast cells is like the soldier carrying the weapon. Okay, so then let's see, another weapon that the soldier might be carrying is like leukotrienes. Okay, this is another key player. And then there are other, we'll call them cytokines, other allergic or inflammatory cytokines and honestly that's just like a fancy word for a chemical secreted from a cell. So cytokine. But mast cells envelop, so if you can think about this balloon, so if you can think about the mast cell like a balloon, and it's carrying around separate bags of histamine, leukotrienes, and other cytokines. All right, so and then we have to talk about the targets. All right. So we've got our soldier, we've got our weapons, and now we're going to talk about what are the targets. Well, a lot of time, this is going to be the surface membrane of different areas of the body. So this will be no surprise to you. The skin is a target of the mast cells. So when you have an allergic reaction and it goes for your skin, this is a manifestation of all of this happening. So another target is the smooth muscle that lines the tubes in your airway. All right. So when we breathe in, I'm sure everyone has seen a picture of a lung, and you know how it looks like upside down trees in
Uh-huh.
each lung? Yeah. So that is this whole system of tubes called bronchioles that are aligned with smooth muscle. Okay. And then
Okay.
another target is the gut lining, and this is also smooth muscle. Okay. So now let's talk
So,
about,
are you gonna
yeah.
talk? Why is it important that it's smooth muscle?
Well, it's important that it's smooth muscles. Smooth muscle lines all of the hollow organs and tubes in your body.
Okay.
They're all lined in smooth muscle. Now, the reason for this is because we need contractility. Otherwise, those things are just hanging around like a piece of PVC pipe, right?
Okay.
So if your arteries weren't lined with smooth muscle, they wouldn't be contractile. So they wouldn't be able to enlarge or contract and constrict, and you wouldn't be able to control your blood pressure. So that's one of the mechanisms by which your brain is able to control your blood pressure, is by relaxing or contracting that smooth muscle that lines all of your vasculature. Um,
And that's where, like, since it can contract, like if you're
mhm.
having a maybe an asthma attack, it's contracting and
Yes.
therefore it's closing off the
Yeah,
airways.
exactly. Exactly. Um, yes. So if you're having an inflammatory response, that means that smooth muscle it's contracting so hard that it's actually getting in the way of the air going through those tubes in your bronchioles. Okay.
Huh. Okay.
Um, and think about the contractility of your bladder. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
So yeah, you want that to be able to expand, right? Because if it can't, then you've got this little pea-sized thing, and yeah, again, another pun. But you got this little pea-sized receptacle, and you would be in the bathroom all day. So
But
yeah,
at the
all.
opposite
Mhm.
end of that, literally, is like there's people that have issues going to the bathroom, so it's not contracting, right?
Well, that would be. Oh, that is a whole nother complexity. There are bladder spasms, there are prostate issues, there are prolapse issues. So lots of anatomy involved in bathroom issues, which
Okay.
actually might not be a bad episode for later on.
Probably not.
But anyway, all right. So getting back to this, so I want you to think about what causes these reactions to what causes the allergy symptoms. So, literally, we're talking about like pollen that comes from
Hmm.
trees. We're talking about, you know, pollen or reproductive compounds that come from grasses or weeds, lots of stuff that springs up in the springtime start to give us allergic responses. So now, most people, they walk outside in the springtime and nothing happens to them, right?
Hmm. Yep.
Because their bodies understand that pollen is not a mortal enemy. It's just pollen. It's just that's all it is. It's not
Everybody
trying to kill
calm
you.
down.
That's right. Everybody needs to chill out. But in the body that struggles with like allergic rhinitis or seasonal allergies, pollen is a big deal and the body freaks out. And you could apply this to cat dander, to dog dander, to any other environmental allergy that you could think of that people experience. So what happens in the springtime? You've got this release of all this pollen into the air. And so that is a foreign substance that comes down into the bronchioles, right? So you breathe it in, it comes down into the bronchioles, and the body is all of a sudden on super, super high alert. So those mast cells, they will start to congregate, all right? So there are receptors. It's like a lock and a key on the surface of your body's cells. There's like the all of these locks. And sometimes the pollen will fit into that lock like a key. And
Hmm.
if it does, then the reaction starts. So that's like that first domino getting hit, and then all the rest of them fall. And it's literally called a cascade of events. So it is very much like a whole line of dominoes falling. So once it starts, then it's very hard to get that cascade of events clawed back. All right. So, you've got this allergen that comes in and it binds to that receptor, and then all of a sudden your body is on high alert. And those mast cells all come crowding around, and they all of a sudden they split open. And guess what comes busting out of there is little bags of histamine, leukotrienes, and other cytokines. So we talked about these agents, right? Histamine, leukotriene, and other cytokines. Now, I'm going to talk specifically about histamine, but just know it's a little more complex than this. But histamine is a great representative example of these inflammatory cytokines. So, histamine, the most well known, we talk about it, right? Because we take antihistamines. So it's in the public vernacular. People know about histamine, but it comes from these mast cells. And so it's literally in like a bag. And so it breaks open, and that bag will go and find the cell that has the allergen bound on its surface, and the bag will fuse with the cell membrane. Isn't that crazy?
Huh.
And then it will dump the contents of the bag, which is histamine, it will dump that down into the cell. And now there are white blood cells, and these are the warriors. They are other warriors in the body. The white blood cells will detect levels of histamine, and they will, by a process called chemotaxis, they will start to um it's like they can smell it. They're like bloodhounds, right? So it's like they've picked up the scent of the enemy, and they will start heading towards the highest concentration of histamine. That's how they find their way to the area. All right. So with those white blood cells comes a ton of fluid. And so we get not only do you get a ton of fluid, but you also get the blood vessels that are feeding that area in response to this histamine, they become leaky. And so all this extra fluid leaks out of the blood vessels and into the area. Have your eyes ever swollen up
Mhm.
and your
Yeah.
nose swollen up and your face looks kind of puffy when you have like really bad seasonal allergies?
Oh yeah.
This is why. Because you've got those blood vessels that get a little leaky. And so that extra fluid that comes along with the white blood cells, it leaks out of the vasculature and into the surrounding tissue. And yeah, it just goes to town. So you end up being all puffy and congested. Um, and so the so let's see, we've gotten to the histamine that gets dumped into the cell, and um let's talk about some of the things that happen because of this. So increased mucus production is one of the things that happens. So do you notice increased mucus production when you are having
Uh,
when you're having allergy symptoms? Heck yeah.
oh yes.
Yeah, so your nose is running constantly, your eyes are watering, you wake up with this little cough because you have this drip that's constantly
Or dry
going.
mouth because you can't breathe through your nose, so you're breathing
Yes,
through your mouth.
that's right. That's right. Yes. So there are so many symptoms that come along with this. Also, if someone is constantly throat clearing, one of the things, so if you've got a kid that is constantly throat clearing, a lot of times kids can't, like, they don't have words if they're too young. They may not have words for why they're throat clearing, like they can't fully conceptualize, like, I'm congested, I've got postnasal drip. They just know that they're clearing their throat and it drives their
Right.
parents crazy. So one of the things you can look into is a possibility for environmental allergies if you've got that constant throat clearing. Um, can also lead to some coughing. So that postnasal drip, again, with the increased mucus production, um, that postnasal drip can trigger a cough response as well. So you've also got, let's see, what else happens? Well, we got swelling, right? Because of that permeability. We've got airway constriction. So again, that smooth muscle gets triggered and it constricts, and it literally, the tube that you're breathing into gets smaller and smaller, so you get airway constriction.
Mhm.
You also can get increased gut peristalsis. So in response to histamine, now this is not a bad thing. All right. These two things that I'm going to talk about now are not necessarily bad things, because when you think about it, histamine has to be there for a reason, right? We're not created with all these bags of histamine for no reason. It can't just be to respond to allergens in the air, which don't really do us any harm. They have to be there for a reason, and they are. So, one of those things is it will, when the smooth muscle of the gut responds to that histamine, it will increase peristalsis. Peristalsis is that rhythmic contraction of the gut, and that's what pushes stool through. And when you get increased peristalsis, that leads often to diarrhea. Okay.
Mhm.
Now, this is a good thing because
It's the
that
body
his
getting rid of stuff.
yes, it's the body getting rid of like an infectious, like a viral gastroenteritis. So, we've all had those bouts of diarrhea that last like, they're terrible. They come through like a freight train, and they last for like 24 to 72 hours and then they're gone. And so that is the body's way of saying, hey, we're under attack by this bacteria or this virus. We need to clear this stuff out. And so the bags of histamine will crack open and peristalsis will increase, and the body like gets rid of everything in it, and like you are cleaned out. All right. And so that is its way of getting rid of the bacterial or viral load that's making you sick.
Okay.
Now, the other cool thing about this is that um, we get an increase in, so with that histamine, with the cytokines, with the leukotrienes, we get tissue repair mechanisms. So these mast cells also will gather around, not just when there are invaders, but also when you have injuries. All right. And so, in order to repair tissue, you need blood. And so, it will engage in tissue repair activities, but also angiogenesis. All right. So, angiogenesis is the building and recruitment of blood vessels to an area. All right. So,
So,
in
like, if
fact,
you got a cut, like,
yeah,
that's what's happening? Okay.
exactly, exactly. If you've got a cut, if you've got an area internally that is needing repair, then your body will literally build a blood vessel to that area so that you can supply it with blood and oxygen and nutrients, and it can repair itself.
That's
Okay.
awesome.
Yeah, it's very cool. Um, so on the macro level, we've already talked about a few of the things that happen when we are creating a lot of mucus, right? We talked about runny nose, eyes watering, throat clearing, coughing, but there are also things that happen as a direct response to histamine, and a couple of those things are itching and sneezing. Lots of
Yep.
itching, lots of sneezing. That is a classic response to allergens. And then we also have another response that is probably drives people into their primary care as often as any other allergic symptom, maybe at the top of the list, and that is those sinus headaches. And they
Mhm.
can put you down. They are terrible. Sinus headaches are awful. They are some of the most painful kinds of headaches, and it's as a result of all of that pressure. So think about it. You're here, you are creating all of this mucus in your sinus cavities, but then your nasal passages are so swollen, you can't get any of the mucus out. And so it just keeps creating pressure upon pressure upon pressure. So when you go in and your provider pushes on your forehead and pushes on your sinuses on either side of your nose, and it hurts like the dickens, they're not trying to torture you. They're trying to figure out if this headache is sinus related.
And
Um,
those headaches are typically frontal lobe?
They are typically frontal headaches. Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. And that's the space, right where your glabella is. That's a huge Botox target, right? That's where you get the mad lines. It's
The
typically
11s?
the 11s. Yes, it's typically right above there that you'll see the pain if you push on it.
Okay.
And so then we also have, the very common rash and hives. And I also wanted to talk about one other downstream effect of swelling called allergic shiners. So usually we see this in kids, but I see adults walking around with it all the time, especially in the springtime when all this stuff gets going, when you get those big dark circles underneath your eyes, and you'll see kids with them,
Oh,
um,
yeah.
who are suffering with allergies, and it's a bluish discoloration underneath their eyes. That's why it's called a shiner, like they have a black eye,
Yeah.
but
Okay.
it's an allergic shiner because it's as a result of all of this fluid buildup. So you get blood backed up in that area too, and that's how you get the bluish kind of color that
Okay.
shows up there too. So yeah, that's a telltale sign for sure. If you've got a kid with an allergic shiner, big dark circles under their eyes, then yeah, you can be pretty well assured that we're probably dealing with some allergy symptoms. And then the other obvious one is we've got asthma like symptoms, right? Because you've got those bronchioles that are lined with the smooth muscle, they're constricting, and so you get these asthma like symptoms. And this is where somebody that has asthma, like diagnosed asthma, they will get worse often in times of allergies, like when their
Mm.
seasonal allergies are kicking. Um, Now, I also wanted to talk about a pretty unique response that often people don't know about. So there's something called cytokine sickness. So remember, I talked about histamine, leukotrienes, and then other cytokines. So cytokines are um, those inflammatory bits of protein that cause massive inflammation system wide via a lot of different mechanisms. But cytokine sickness, when your body is loaded with cytokine, you will become fatigued as if you had the flu. So if you recall back to a time when you had really bad allergies, I mean they were really kicking. These folks are exhausted. And so this is why. It's not that they're sick. They don't have a communicable illness. They don't have a bacterial or viral infection. They literally have cytokine sickness. So it's the inflammatory compounds in their own bodies that are making them so fatigued.
So next time you go to work and they're like wanting to send you home, you can just say, "No, I have side," or you can use that excuse to get sent
That's
home.
right. Yeah,
I have
back of
this rare
hand,
condition called
back of
cytokine
hand to
sickness.
forehead. Yes, I have cytokine sickness. I need to go
They'll
home.
be like, "Oh my gosh, that sounds horrible. Go home."
I hope you're gonna live. Yeah, me too.
You should probably go to the doctor. Oh, I'm
That's
on my
right.
way. It's fine.
As we speak, I'm headed out. So now that you all know exactly what's happening and why you're getting all of these symptoms, tune in next week and we will talk about how to mitigate these. And in fact, we're going to talk about prophylactic natural agents that you can take beforehand that will keep you from getting all of these symptoms. And Ashley can attest, they really work.
Oh my gosh, yes. And what's funny is I've been taking this since I was a baby. So,
Yeah,
my
that's
mom,
true. Yes, that I think that's the first
maybe not a
supplement
baby,
we
but
bonded over.
yeah, we disagreed on the
Pronunciation.
pronunciation,
You've
but
and I still don't know who's right, but you've come over to the dark side. I think I just say it with confidence. So
say anything with confidence and
that's
you'll
right.
win the crowd over.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah, no,
So
I'm excited about this next episode. So definitely tune in. And, if you're like listening to this in the summertime and you're like, oh, it's too late. No, it's not. Like,
nope.
you have this information for next year,
Hmm.
and you can be
Yeah.
better prepared. So
And we're also I am also going to give some information on what you can do for acute exacerbations. So if you're suffering now and you're listening to this in the summertime, hit the next episode cuz I'll give you lots of stuff that you can do.
awesome. Looking forward to it. As always, thank you so much for listening. And thank you for those who have started sending in more questions. We love hearing from you guys.
Yes, we do.
And it's been fun going to some of my clients. They're like, oh my gosh, I shared this episode with somebody, either friend or family. So that's honestly the biggest compliment that we can receive is that if you found this episode or just this
Mhm.
whole entire podcast beneficial or educational, the biggest compliment is to share it. So please do that. And if you do it so on social media, definitely make sure you tag us so we can
Yeah, we
say
want to
thank
know.
you.
That makes our day.
Yeah, we want to say thank you. So, and if you haven't already, definitely check out the show notes as we have our contact information down there. You can always shoot us an email at askAAPodcast at gmail.com or find us on the grams and
Mhm.
shoot over your question there. But looking forward to seeing you on, or not seeing you, but looking
I'll see
forward to
you.
having you on our next episode. And we will see you then.
Bye. The
content provided in the AA podcast is intended for informational and educational purposes only. The podcast is not a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always seek the advice of your physician or other qualified health provider with any questions you may have regarding a medical condition. The information and opinions expressed in this podcast are solely those of the individuals involved and do not constitute medical advice.